to Fancy and Frames. I'm Jonathan, and today I'm going to be talking to you about why Samaje Perine should be a target for you in Redraft this off-season. Before I get started, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to Fancy and Frames for all of your fantasy football needs. Samaje Perine, he is a veteran running back going into his 7th season in the NFL. He spent 3 seasons as the backup to Joe Mixon in Cincinnati before moving to Denver earlier this offseason in a 2-year, $7.5 million deal. Now, he moves to a Denver team which obviously had its fair share of issues on offense last season, but will hopefully be rejuvenated by the introduction of Sean Payton there. That team has also made plenty of moves to shore up the offensive line this offseason as well, signing the likes of Mike McGlinchey, Ben Powers, to hopefully improve the running game, but obviously hopefully to improve the offense as a whole there as well. So Perine will operate as the team's RB2 behind Javonte Williams, who has obviously been recovering from quite a serious knee injury that he picked up partway through last season. Now, something to really important to keep in mind throughout this when thinking about Perine is this quote here from Perine talking about how Sean Payton's backfields tend to operate. He has often looked for a committee approach, and I don't think that is something that is likely to change in Denver, given the investment into Perine and also the injury concerns that the team will likely have in Javonte Williams, particularly early in the season. So if we look at Perine's stats from last year, 95 rushing attempts, 394 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground, with further 51 targets, 38 receptions, 287 yards, and 4 touchdowns through the air. So, which equated to 8.9 fantasy points per game in full PPR scoring. So he was mainly used as a pass catching back in Cincinnati and a backup to Joe Mixon. He did see his touches rise in each of the last 3 years, and what's important that those were quite sort of high value touches, hitting a career high 51 targets last year, which is what fantasy managers really like to see for those PPR points. It is important to note with the average of 8.9 fantasy points per game, that was skewed by a 3-week period where Joe Mixon was out and Perine very capably stepped in as the lead back, scoring an average of 23.7 points per game over that period. Couple of things to consider when thinking about Perine. I don't think there are too many concerns. I think, but obviously we do have to wonder kind of what this offense is going to look like. Obviously, they did have a lot of issues last season. Were ranked really low in offensive DVOA, and so we need to consider. We need to have some trepidation over this offense given the struggles that it had. How much of that was on Russell Wilson? How much of that was on the coaching staff? That's an answer that we will soon get in the season. How much can it improve? How much can Sean Payton improve it? And therefore, how is that then going to affect Samaje Perine? I think you could also make the argument that some of the running backs being drafted in a similar range could potentially have a higher ceiling without injuries occurring to teammates as well. And it is really important to note that Perine, as we can see here, is not a back who has commanded a regular high volume of touches over his time in the league. But onto the positives. I think thankfully Javonte Williams has, appears to be making really good progress with his injury, but we have plenty of evidence that this journey is not necessarily a smooth one. Um, I think J.K. Dobbins last season is a really, really good example of kind of how we should be approaching these injuries, how we should be thinking about them, and it is not always going to be um, smooth sailing with these kind of serious um, injuries. And I think particularly kind of early in the season, there is a good chance that Pirine kind of commands a higher volume of touches than we maybe expect. And I think, as I mentioned before, Pirine's 3 game stretch last season kind of really dominated, really, really kind of demonstrated that he can dominate if he kind of you know if he does have that larger workload and he is able to handle it. Um, I think kind of irrespective of that injury, Pirine does kind of have more standalone value than at any point during his time in Cincinnati. I think particularly, as I said, in that early season period, and also given his skill set as the pass catching back, I think, in PPR leagues, that's going to be really, really valuable, irrespective of what happens with Javonte Williams. And as I mentioned before, Sean Payton has long used a committee approach at running back. I think with the concerns that, you know, the team will inevitably have with Javonte Williams of not wanting to give him, all of the work there, I think there's no reason to suggest that will change or should change. And all of this should come in an offense that should hopefully be much improved on last season. So when we kind of look at it in fancy terms, he is, at the time of recording, currently ranked as the RB36 in Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings. So I think he's in a great position to beat his average draft position, whatever the circumstances. If we look at the running backs being drafted kind of in a similar range, I think it's really noticeable that quite a few of those, likes of AJ Dillon, Brian Robinson, Jamal Williams, do not really possess the same kind of PPR upside that Pirine clearly possesses, as we've seen from his work in the passing game, particularly last season. Um, and so, yeah, as a result, I think that he is a really good bet to beat ADP. I think he's going to be a really solid flex option for you throughout the season, but particularly in those first few weeks, and obviously possesses bags of upside with it as well. So, my thoughts on Samaje Perine and why I think he is a really good option for you in drafts this offseason. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is he someone that you have been targeting in drafts as well? And make sure you are subscribed to Fancy and Frames so you don't miss any of our content going forwards. Thank you very much.